The UK's Shadow Minister for International Climate Change believes Brexit will cause the country's energy sector to experience several years of uncertainty. One of the EU's largest solar PV energy generators is spearheading a massive solar energy investment in India. And the managing editor of Hydro Review and HRW Hydro Review Worldwide joins me in the studio to discuss hydro financing. It's Thursday, November 17th, and this is Power Today. Hello and welcome to Power Today for Thursday, November 17th. I'm Cassie Haley. We begin today's edition of Power Today in London, where Barry Gardiner, the UK's Shadow Minister for International Climate Change, spoke recently at the Economist Energy Summit. Mr. Gardiner said, "The decision of the UK to leave the European Union means that at best we are looking at several years of uncertainty for the British energy sector." Gardiner emphasized that in the wake of the Brexit decision, the first thing the country needed was clarity. He further noted, there is greater uncertainty about what the government is doing in various areas of energy policy. There is a lack of clarity, and some things which seemed clear have changed. Gardiner said it was vital for the energy industry, its existing and potential investors, to understand as much as possible about what leaving the EU means before investors can start to make investment decisions. Mr. Gardiner said the UK had been instrumental in shaping the internal European market and stated that if the country was to move outside of it, it will be a huge loss to Europe as well as the UK. You can find more on this story and other power news and information from around the globe at powerengineeringint.com. In other power news, Lightsource Renewable Energy, one of the largest solar PV energy generators globally based in the UK and Europe, is spearheading a massive investment in solar energy in India. The company recently won a 50-megawatt solar project in Maharashtra under the central government's National Solar Mission. In a public statement, Lightsource said it is looking to develop 1,000 megawatts over the next 2 to 3 years. The company announced its Indian management with the appointment of Rupesh Agarwal as managing director for its India operations. Agarwal has been associated with Marquee Advisories and helped set up and lead the clean tech practice at EY India, and was an Endeavour ambassador appointed by the Australian High Commissioner to India. Agarwal said recently, the Indian government has set ambitious targets for solar energy, smart solutions, and reducing the carbon footprint, and we look forward to building a next-generation utility company in India. Lightsource operates plants generating 1,300 megawatts of solar PV in the United Kingdom. We're going to take a short break. When Power Today returns, the managing editor of Hydro Review and HRW Hydro Review Worldwide joins me to discuss hydropower financing. Inside the Industry is up next. Stay with us. From December 13th through 15th, thousands will be in Orlando for the largest power industry show in the world, PowerGen International 2016. Hello, I'm Cassie Haley, host of the daily power news and information show, Power Today, and I'm here to tell you about a great way to get your message to the PowerGen audience. At this year's show, I'll be conducting content interviews with a select group of companies and thought leaders who recognize the importance of video in marketing their message. These one-on-one interviews will be featured on Power Today and will then be made available to use in any way you'd like. Power Today airs daily across a broad variety of Penwell sites, including Power Engineering, and has become a known and respected brand within the world of power. We take pride in keeping the power industry informed and telling our viewers about the exciting stories, people, and companies that are moving the industry forward. This is your opportunity to reach the ideal audience and to make sure your message is heard. I've been speaking with Bill Newsom today about Mitsubishi's J-Series gas turbine, the M501J. There is limited time available to schedule your PowerGen interview, so please don't put off locking in what could be your best marketing investment of the year. I'm Cassie Haley. I look forward to speaking with you at PowerGen International. Welcome back. Elizabeth Ingram is the managing editor of Hydro Review and HRW Hydro Review Worldwide. She recently joined me in the studio to discuss hydro financing. Here's today's Inside the Industry. Thank you for joining Inside the Industry. Let's welcome Elizabeth Ingram.
Thank you.
Last time you joined us, Elizabeth, you told us all about small hydro, but I am always amazed at the enormity of the giant hydropower projects. How much does something like that cost?
Yeah, I think that the subject of financing hydropower is really fascinating, and there is a ton of money behind that type of development work, rehabilitation work. So a couple years ago in Hydro Review magazine, we decided to try and sort of capture the size of the market for hydropower. That was really just in the U.S., but we found that of the 10 largest hydro financing deals in the U.S. that year, that they were more than $18.7 billion. And those were new development, acquisitions, all kinds of different financing deals. But it was really surprising how much money was being spent on hydropower. And that was just in the U.S. So we've done some looking kind of internationally to see how the numbers kind of match up. And the International Hydropower Association, for example, they reported that in 2015 there were 33 gigawatts of new hydropower capacity built worldwide. So if you look at a per kilowatt basis of cost of developing those facilities, that activity alone was about $75.9 billion of investment. And that's just in new development, not rehab, not upgrades, not acquisitions, just new development.
It's incredible. I mean, where does that money come from?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different sources for financing hydro, and that's also the biggest challenge for the hydropower industry. Where do we find that money? How do we access it? And so obviously one of the bigger options is the multilateral funding banks.
Okay.
And so on hydroworld.com recently we reported on some activity in that sector. The multilateral banks are really vital for hydropower development, primarily in the developing world. So a couple of recent deals that we reported on in terms of financing were the Asian Development Bank. They actually came out saying they were not going to commit funding to the Diamar Basha project in Pakistan right now. They're not saying they won't commit financing later. But in the same stroke, they were saying that they were going to provide $100 million to develop other hydro plants in the country. So there's one example of a multilateral bank funding hydro. And another one is the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. They just committed to providing $55 million to support renewable energy in Turkey, including hydropower.
Okay.
Just a couple of examples of how important those multilateral banks are and the size of the funding that they can offer to hydropower.
They are. Where else could some of that funding come from?
Another place that a lot of hydropower funding comes from is from government support.
Okay.
For example, in Canada. So the government helps fund development of hydro projects in Canada. And recently, the federal government provided an additional $2.9 billion to help build the 825 megawatt Muskrat Falls project in Labrador. Total investment for that project is expected to be $11.4 billion. So the government's, putting their support behind that. And then the government of Zimbabwe recently released $20.3 million to complete a small hydro facility in that country. So those are just a couple of very recent examples of the government funding hydropower development.
What about the private sector?
Oh, the private sector, that's a great question. The private sector is so important to hydro development. There's a lot of focus on getting private financing for hydropower to kind of fill that gap between what the government can offer, what the multilateral banks can offer, and how we can get the money to finalize some of these facilities. So in Scotland, it was a really interesting case study we just published on our website. A small group called the Rumbling Bridge Hydro Community actually did a stock offering to build a small hydro facility, and they got all the money they needed and a little bit more
from the private sector.
From private sector individuals putting their support behind hydro in that country. And then earlier this year, the International Hydropower Association hosted a webinar on trends in hydropower financing that was really interesting, and it talked about particularly donor-backed finance. To mobilize private financing into the hydropower sector and to capitalize on what they're calling public-private partnerships to build more hydro. So many countries, they really need those public-private partnerships, and there's definitely more interest in them and more momentum behind them. So I see that as an area where there can be more funding available for hydropower to get more of these projects built.
Okay. Thanks again for joining us, Elizabeth, and sharing the fascinating world of financing for hydro. Thanks for watching today. Join us tomorrow when the Chief Editor of Power Engineering, Russell Ray, joins us in the studio. Thanks for watching Inside the Industry. That's going to wrap things up for us on Power Today. You can link to the show directly at powertoday.tv, and you can follow me at @CassieHaley on Twitter. For everyone at Power Today, have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow at noon, 11 Central.